Welcome to the Real Estate Espresso Podcast, your morning shot of what's new in the world of real estate investing. I'm your host, Victor Menashe. This is the weekend edition where we interview notable people from the world of real estate investing. Today is no exception. We have a great guest all the way from Beverly Hills. Welcome to the show, Howard Lorey.
Hi, Victor. Thank you for having me back.
Well, great to have you here. It's been a while since you were last on the show, and excited to get an update because you're in a unique segment of the market with a very unique client base, and conditions have changed. A lot has changed, and so love to get an update. There are some things that vary with time, and yet there are things that are timeless. But maybe before we do, perhaps give a little bit of your backstory and how you got to this point in your journey.
Well, let's see. I've been licensed about 26 years now. Started at a large national firm here in Los Angeles in Los Feliz, and then went to work for Nourmand Associates, the brokerage that I'm with now, in 2007. We built out that office in Hollywood, and then went to work on a larger scale for the company in 2018, and transferred over to our Beverly Hills office, which is our flagship office, largest office, in 2022. So I've been there about 3.5 years now.
The segment you work with, of course, Beverly Hills is known for having some extraordinary villas and estate properties, and that makes up, if not the meat and potatoes of your business, it's a big percentage.
Yes. We do all price points, but particularly on the West Side and in Beverly Hills, we are definitely a player in the elite luxury markets. And we've been in business since '76, so our brand Nourmand name is synonymous with that, and that's been an easy segue for us.
There's a distinction between new money and old money in terms of the way that those investments get made. And there's examples of both in Beverly Hills for sure.
Right.
And when people acquire a property, whether it's just for their family, whether it's a trophy asset, whatever it might be, there's a story associated with that, because at the end of the day, you don't need a 15-bedroom house just for shelter. How does that play out? What if I think about how do you staff for servicing that client? What do you do that's different?
Well, we are different. We are different than a lot of the large national companies that have been, acquiring a lot over the last few years. We're privately owned, independent, and we do play in the luxury markets. So what we've learned is that the relationship is really paramount. And when you're working with a high net worth individual on an estate like property, the story behind the property is very important. And a really savvy agent knows how to do this. And it connects the buyer's emotional and lifestyle priorities to the property and gives it a personality and a face, and to give the buyer something to bond to.
So is it as simple as some famous person lived here 30 years ago, or is there more to it than that? Is brand name architect designed the place? What is it? Is it all of those?
It could be a combination of a lot of things. It could be as simple as a celebrity owned home from previously, maybe the architect that built it. If you had a very prolific specialized architect who built it for a celebrity, that can be it. But it's really about the agent getting in the water with the owner and figuring out what that story is and how that story is going to be presented, because that is what creates the lifestyle image in the buyer's mind about how they're going to live in a daily way at the property.
The perception of value, of course, is a little bit in the eye of the beholder. So at this level, folks are looking for not just luxury amenities, but they're looking for privacy. They're looking for maybe entertaining space. They're looking for a certain set of criteria. Where does that come into your process?
It's interesting and you're specifically talking about buyers, investors when they're acquiring.
Correct. Yeah.
Yeah. So it's interesting because most clients define value differently. Some are very holistic about it. Some are very pragmatic about it and lean into very typical attributes, location, privacy, like you said, lifestyle alignment. design integrity, aesthetic. But what I've learned is that a lot of those clients have a predisposed idea of what those values are, but they often shift when they're in the moment at a special property. That's usually when those values, those non-negotiables really reveal themselves.
Interesting. Now, we're often, when we talk about this, we're often thinking about someone who's going to own or occupy. And yet there is, for sure, a segment, I don't know how big, you probably know better than I do, of folks that will acquire property simply to put it in the market for a celebrity that needs a pied-à-terre in LA for 2 years or whatever it might be. How would you characterize that market?
Um, I would characterize that market as still a strong part of what we do because of entertainment, and even with the slump entertainment's had, we still have a lot of celebrity based type of clients, whether you're a writer or an actor or a musician or TV personality. And a lot of times what they will do is buy a property and hold, or if it's pedigreed by an architect or by a previous celebrity, that tends to hold more value for them. And also, the luxury rental market is so strong here. If they have to leave, or an investor has to leave to move to another city to manage other investments, the rental numbers that they can get can be astounding.
I've seen in places, for example, Martha's Vineyard, places like that, unique properties often renting for 50, 60, 80,000 a month in peak season. Are we talking those kind of numbers or even higher?
Higher would be very rare. We have had some, a very few.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but yeah, the 50 to 75 range, we see that frequently. And if you just do the simple math on that, the 50 times 12 that's a lot of return on that investment in a 12-month period.
Absolutely. I mean, those are kind of numbers associated with an entire apartment building, let alone a single unit.
And we our rental landscape in Los Angeles, inside the city of Los Angeles, has become more cumbersome due to the evolving rent laws and the fires we had, et cetera. But a single family, you sidestep a lot of that, and you're dealing with usually one tenant. And if you can recoup $600,000 for a single family in Bel Air or Holmby or the Beverly Hills Flats, it's very possible. So we do see that a lot.
And do you see a lot of investors going specifically into that market, making purposeful investments, or are they accidental investments? Well, I bought this place, don't know what to do with it, so I'll just throw it in the rental market.
No, I think it's more intentional now. I think it's more intentional. I think people realize the amount of equity that they can grow in those types of investments quickly, and the immediate return they can get inside the leasing market if it's defined as a luxury property. Because a lot of times those leases are not super long term. That may only be 12 months and then get extended from there. But even if it's a short term lease, they can generally release it for a very similar number to what they had prior.
And are these properties, if I had to, and I know generalizations are usually wrong in many cases, but are these properties also looking for staff accommodations, whether it's live-in help, live-in educators, nannies, whatever it might be? Are these features that are often required as part of these properties?
No, no. Generally, the people that lease those homes kind of have their support network around them. So, if they come in and they lease a home for $50,000, they have their. It's not provided as part of the lease. They usually have their nannies and their housekeeper and their assistants and people that are going to help service their daily life, but they're generally not part of the lease.
Got it. So when you're dissecting value for a customer, what would be some of the broad categories that you would be looking at that you would want to identify as part of that client intake process?
Good question. It's interesting because like I was saying, a lot of times it's not just about the price. It could be about a multitude of factors, and a lot of times what they tell us isn't actually what moves the needle when they see something special. So if you take a client to see something really special and they say, I only want a modern house, must be a private, it must have a pool. And then you have a really significant, Paul Williams Spanish Mediterranean that comes on the market with that doesn't have a pool. A lot of times when they're in the moment on that, in the fire, seeing that property, the priorities change. So, I think it's really incumbent on the agent to be quiet and to listen and observe what's happening in the moment. I think that's essential to discovering the real priorities of the client, especially with high net worth people, because it can change quickly. Like I said, the non-negotiables are not always spoken. They're defined. They're defined when the inspiration presents itself. It's like the true desire of something they want. That's when you find out, well, it's not in the school district, so I can't entertain it. Or, oh, maybe I send my kid to a private school, when all along they've told you it has to be in a certain school district, or it has to be a certain style. It has to be a mid-century. But I've seen people flip on a dime when they see something special.
So there's the known spoken, there's the known unspoken, and maybe the unknown unspoken.
Correct. Yes. A lot of times you don't know what it is, but you discover it when you show special things. So generally, if you're working with an individual like this, you try to find as many special things to show them as possible, even if it doesn't fit the criteria that they've given you from the outset, because it can change very quickly.
Mm-hmm. Love it. Well, Howard, if folks want to connect, if they want to learn more, what's the best way?
Best way is through email. My email is on our website at Nourmand.com, or you can reach me at hlorey@Nourmand.com. And all my personal contact information is there. You can get me through LinkedIn. You can find me there.
Love it. Well, Howard, great to connect as always. And for the listeners at home, definitely, if you're interested in the luxury segment, check out Nourmand.com, connect with Howard Lorey directly. The links will be in the show notes. And in the meantime, have an awesome rest of your weekend. Go make some great things happen. And we'll talk to you again tomorrow.